Today we're going to talk about the Chicago Bears, and one of their most important players is Darnell Wright has been named the most important non-quarterback MVP on the Chicago Bears by NFL.com. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, Joe Thuney was rated as one of the top 100 players in the NFL by his peers, as other players in the NFL. And we're going to talk about three things that the Chicago Bears have to do this season to get over that playoff hump that they faced last season and maybe, just maybe, actually make it to the Super Bowl. We're talking about all that plus more on today's Chicago Bears Central. What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, before we get into the content, though, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. I think many of you may have forgotten that we have a goal of getting to 30,000 subscribers by the start of the season. We are a little under 5,000 subscribers away from getting that done. But looking at the analytics, about 45% of y'all that watch the channel every single day have not yet hit that subscribe button. Stop freeloading, hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free. You have to pay nothing to subscribe. Helps us reach our goal. In exchange for that, we will be delivering the best, most consistent daily Chicago Bears content you're going to find around. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the content. So Darnell Wright was named as the Bears' most important player, non-quarterback player on the Chicago Bears by Kevin Patra of NFL.com. He said this: the Bears finally explored sexy offense last season, which overshadowed Wright's ascension towards the top of the right tackle rankings. The 325-pounder has improved each of his three seasons as both a run grader and pass protector. He shined in year one under Ben Johnson, generating career-best 3.8% pressure rate, allowed last year Pro Football Focus, a shade below first-team All-Pro Penny Sewell's 3.3% figure. Wright has the tools to continue climbing the charts as one of the best blockers in the NFL. At the very least, the man should earn a Pro Bowl nod after being snubbed last season. One thing I do love about what Darnell Wright has brought to this team is that he's somebody that has continually worked and improved and shined throughout all the bullshit that we've had since his rookie year, right? Like, of course, last season, having Ben Johnson here, he brought more structure. We also had a much better offensive line. We also had Dan Roushar as the offensive line coach, and all those things put the Chicago Bears offensive line at one of the best in the game of football last year. You look at Darnell, Joe Thuney, Drew Dalton, Jonah Jackson, Ozzie Trapillo when he, eventually came in there. The Bears had absolute weapons on that offensive line. And it's not always sexy to talk about offensive linemen, right? Because, what you have to do when you talk about offensive linemen is a lot of pressure rates, Pro Football Focus grades, just to get kind of to be able to talk about what they do well. And when you have some, people that watch the show like my brother Darius, who, because he's from Texas and he number over 5, it kind of makes his eyes go cross. Shout out to Darius. Me and Darius had a really good conversation offline yesterday, man. Darius is a really good dude. That's my brother. That's why I throw some shots at him. But, overall, I like what Darnell Wright has done as far as growth. Year after year, getting better. Even when the offensive line was absolute shit, Darnell Wright looked good and he improved in that time. And like I said before, that's really what you want from guys that you draft. And, as many people now that try to look at all the Bears' good draft picks that they view as good, it had to be Ben Johnson. Like, Darnell Wright was one of those guys that Ryan Poles drafted at a time, at the time that Ryan Poles drafted Darnell Wright, it was a time where we were, as Bears fans, questioning Ryan Poles' ability to evaluate offensive linemen, right? And he had earned that. To question him in regards to that, especially as a former offensive lineman himself, who had just not really gotten that next level offensive lineman. And then you had Darnell Wright. You got Ozzie Trapillo here, as well, even though he's injured this season. And maybe that thing starts to turn around, and hopefully he starts doing it on the defensive side of the ball as well, on the trenches there. But trenches are so important to a football team being able to make that next step. It just is. And if you don't have solid trench play on both sides of the ball, I think it really does limit your cap on how good your team can be. And so having Darnell Wright here, having Dan Roushar here, and those type of things is really good. And hopefully the Bears' offensive line is off to, having that a young, dominant offensive line as well. Like, yeah, we got Jonah Jackson here now. We got Joe Thuney here now, right? But you have guys like Darnell Wright. You hope that, of course, like Luke Newman, right? Caden Barnett, Jordan Vandenberg, Logan Jones, not Jordan Vandenberg. Logan Jones is going to be able to make that next step up. And then you can have players that spent years learning behind the Joe Toonies and the Jonah Jacksons, and then we can have those guys step up and be ready to take over as those guys go into their next phase of their career. That's always always want to have a succession plan where you have. So if we're talking about 2-3 years from now, the Bears offensive line is Ozzie Trapillo, Logan Jones, Luke Newman, Darnell Wright, and you're talking about those guys being part of the plan there and us being still a really good offensive line, a top-level offensive line in the league. That's exactly what you want. And so having Dan Rouchar here as well as the coach of that's molding those young guys is going to be great. But Darnell Wright, he deserves every bit of the praise that he gets, no matter he's an offensive lineman or anything, because Darnell has worked his ass off to get to this point. He's seen some bullshit, and he still continues to just thrive and get to where he needs to get to. And he's learned behind the next guy that we're going to talk about, and that's Joe Tooney. Joe Tooney was recently ranked. He landed at number 49 in the NFL's top 100 list. And why this list is different, right? I want to be clear, is that it's your peers that vote on this. It's other NFL players that are voting on this. So not only did he get Protector of the Year, not only was he a first-team All-Pro for the third straight year as well, you continue to see how respected Joe Tooney is around here. He helped stabilize the left side of that line, after coming over from Kansas City. His presence does nothing but help Caleb Williams and the running game and all that type of stuff. And like I said in the last segment, the development of the next young offensive lineman, having a guy like there is going to be there. You need leadership in your trenches. And the Bears lost a little bit of that with Drew Dahlman, but luckily we still got, a guy like Joe Tooney here because, what he's done and over his career, you cannot overlook. You can if you want to. If you want to overlook how good Joe Tooney has been, over the course of his career, then that's on you. You're going to be behind progress when it comes down to that one. But in this ranking for it says this, again, voted on by his peers. I want to be clear on that. Said this, players around the league agree Tooney is one of the best in the game at what he does. Mr. Consistent. Green Bay Packer edge rusher Micah Parsons calls him, he's one of those guys that you can't replace. He's like a mastermind on the line. Creed Humphrey, a former teammate, talked about Joe Tooney as well, said, great teammate, great leader, great player. He's always so fun to watch, and how technically sound he is. He's always in great position. Now you look at Joe Tooney being added to that top 100 player list. He comes in higher than Caleb Williams, who was there. The Caleb Williams thing, y'all got to bear with me. It's going to be a year. I'm going to let y'all know like this. It's going to be about a year before my brain understands that to separate it. It is what it is. Bear with me. I'm human. But Caleb Williams came in at number 51. Montez Sweat came in at number 91. And now we have Joe Tooney coming here at number 49 overall as far as top 100. The Chicago Bears have 3 of the top 100 players in the game so far. And Joe Tooney is a guy that the Mr. Consistent moniker for him is perfectly, that perfectly described what he's been able to do. He's been the exact definition of professionalism, of knowing and setting a standard. And when you talk about developing young guys, right, which is the thing that I'm always going to focus on because for the Bears, especially now that we do have a franchise quarterback that's going to be paid like a franchise quarterback. We have a franchise left tackle that's going to be paid like a franchise left tackle. Development of your young guys so you're getting the most out of those cheap rookie scale deals is going to matter. So a guy like Logan Jones who's playing the center, having Joe Tooney there in those huddles, in that offensive lineman room, in those tape sessions is going to help. Having a guy like Jonah Jackson for Luke Newman is going to help, right? Theo Benedict, Theo Benedict may end up being a long-term swing tackle, and that's perfectly fine because, again, you need guys like that on your roster. And Caden Barnett, the vanilla gorilla, another guy that you look at and you say, hey, he has a lot of talent here, and you can't wait to see how that's going to grow and how that's going to develop. But guys like Joe Tooney and Jonah Jackson are going to be part of that absolutely. So I don't know how much longer Joe Tooney's going to play, right? You have no idea in regards to that one. He's 33 years old. In life, that's not old at all, but that is when you start getting longer into the tooth, in your NFL career. But one could say, too, we've seen offensive linemen play well into their late 30s, and maybe Joe Tooney could do that. There's no reason for him to stop anytime soon, but have those guys learn, absorb everything. This is a guy that was a former third-round pick and is one of the best, offensive linemen in the game of football, and he's going to continue to be that because you have no reason to believe why he's going to slow down anytime soon. So, the Bears' offensive line is in a really good spot. We'll talk about, one of the things that we need to worry about on that offensive line when we get into the next segment. But wanted to start the show off talking about Darnell Wright, talking about Joe Tooney. But now let's get into it. Three things that the Chicago Bears need to do in 2026 to get over the hump and be over the playoff hump. That's how I'm looking at all of this, is what you need to do to become a playoff team. The first thing, we need to have a better and more consistent defense, right? That's not to say that the offense doesn't have its limitations as well. We're going to get a little bit into that. But the Bears defense, you have to be better. One of the things that I've been talking a lot about over the last couple of weeks with the Chicago Bears defense is we need to be better on third downs. We need to be better in the red zone. You do those type of things, even if you don't have necessarily the best pass rush. And I see a lot of people that say things like, well, without a pass rush, we're doomed. And not necessarily. Depends on how good your coverage is, right? Because, again, you can have the world's best pass rush, but if your secondary can't guard shit, guess what? The quarterback doesn't need much time to make those reads. Everything goes hand in hand, right? And so, and I think a big part of that shows when you're able to get teams off the freaking field and capitalize on that. Red zone, third downs. It's one of the biggest things that I'm looking for early on for the Chicago Bears. We'll let the pass rush develop as it goes. We'll let the secondary and show how we're going to be in that area. But if we can be a team that can at least get those stops on third downs, get those stops in the red zone, that'd be the notice. I didn't say anything about turnovers. Like turnovers I'll take neither here nor there, right? If we're a better, functional, more consistent defense through four downs, you won't necessarily need to rely on turnovers as much as we did last year. Now, don't get me wrong. You can add turnovers with that too. That's how you can become a dominant defense. But to me, it's not about the Bears defense all of a sudden flipping a switch and becoming dominant in 2026. If they do, great. Because like I said, for people who, like to talk, well, the Bears defense didn't improve at all. It's like, did you forget how injured we were? Not just and not just focus on the cornerbacks, but not even just in the secondary, like in the linebackers as well. Do you know how injured we were throughout the entirety of the year? So having better health, performing better on third downs, performing better on the red zone, and of course, if we're able to get to the quarterback more on top of that, that's where that defense can really make that step. Those three things can put you in an elite category by themselves, no matter what else you do on the field. And so hopefully the Bears can do that while building off their strengths also, and still, taking those and taking it a step further. I just want to see this Bears defense be better. We know the offense is probably going to be elite with health. There's not really many questions there. If this defense can just be middle of the pack, with how good this offense can be, if we can just have a defense ranked between 14th and 16th, I really think this team can make a huge step up. And anything above that, man, that's when you start getting dangerous as a team if your defense can be above that. So that's really what I want to look at in regards to that. Like, I think you have to do that. And you get there, it's going to be good. Second thing, the slow starts. We have to stop the slow starts. You look at last season, a big thing that was marked for the Chicago Bears, and especially Caleb Williams and all that type of stuff, was how we came back, how we were able to engineer comebacks. And, and I don't say that as a negative. It means that Ben Johnson was able to read the situation late in games better than the other coach. It means that we were able to perform better than the other coach. And it also means, hey, we got lucky sometimes. We got lucky a lot, right? But I want to see if you can eliminate the slow starts. And much like I said with the defense, be a better four-quarter team and not have to rely on it. Because we now know that Caleb Williams can do the heroics. We now know that Ben Johnson can call those late game plays and those drives. But if you add being in more consistent throughout a total 4 quarters with that ability to where you don't have to rely on that to win games, then you can just go into that in certain clutch scenarios because you're not doing it week in and week out. You don't have to do it week in and week out. That's where you can get to being, again, making that next step. Everything that I'm looking at with this Bears team coming into next season is about how we can be a better playoff team, not just a better regular season team, not just win one or two more games, being a team that can legitimately get over that playoff hump and hopefully get to a Super Bowl. And that's one thing that we have to do. Now, the offense, I think, is going to take a leap this season because of, more familiarity under Ben Johnson's system, Caleb Williams having better control over the offense, and the weaponry and different looks that we can throw out. I think that that's going to be a huge thing here for this team. The dramatic comeback wins, I don't want to see as many of those. I would love not to be the cardiac Bears this season. Elite playoff teams know how to punish slow starts. That's what you see. That's what you've seen throughout the league. That's what you see throughout league history. We got to be better than that, right? Caleb, I think, also can't be, you don't want to ask him to have to rescue us every single game. In year 2, we should have better rhythm early. We already have talked about going into a more high-tempo, offense because that helps Caleb Williams with his strengths and stuff like that. Those are the moments that we have to get to. If we do that, I think there's there. Caleb has the clutch gene. Ben Johnson has the clutch play-calling ability. We have those things. It's no doubt about it. We got those things. But the thing comes down now to how much more can we do outside of that? And how can we make that not have to be such a big part of our week in and week out identity and something that we can just go to the toolbox and pull out when we need it? And that's going to come down to Colston Loveland making another step. That's going to come down to Luther Bird and Romo Dunze making steps. That's how you also use your 12 and 13-man personnel. That's the offensive line standing out. All those type of things to all come together. And one thing that I have not mentioned in this yet, we need to trust our run early. Let our run game establish and set a tone early against those defense. If you wear defenses down with the run early into the game, you'll be surprised how much easier it gets as the game goes on. Consistently having success in the run game, it wears defenses down to where the point at the fourth quarter, hey, you're killing them at that point, right? So, everything has to work in synergy. Everything has to work together. If the Bears can get to that more consistently this year, it's going to be another big season for the Chicago Bears. I truly do believe that. The next thing, the left tackle. The left tackle stability is a question. And now, while me and Bobby, when we talked to Dub on Sunday, I do think Braxton Jones is a perfectly fine, serviceable center. I want to be clear that I really do think he has that. He's a serviceable center, serviceable left tackle. But at the same time, it's still questions. When you have somebody that's so susceptible to the bull rush throughout his career, it doesn't breed the most natural faith, right? I think when you look at this, we know what Joe Thuney brings to the team. Consistent. We just talked about him. Jonah Jackson, we know his strengths with physicality in the run game. Garrett Bradbury, he's going to have stability at that center position. Darnell Wright, one of the best right tackles in the game of football, one of the best tackles in the game of football. If we had Ozzie Trapillo to start off the season fully healthy, it would feel a little bit different, right? But having Braxton Jones, relying on Jedrick Wills, right? Theo Benedict, all these type of guys, they all have different varying levels of questions. Jedrick Wills, it's the health. Braxton Jones, it's the bull rush. Theo Benedict, it's the consistency, right? So you have those things there. And so now we got to see how we left tackle was really good for us last season. We need that consistency. Your offensive line tends to only be as good as the weakest link on that offensive line, because then defenses are going to target you. And that's what these guys have to avoid, is being targeted by opposing defenses. If you do that, things can go pretty well for the Chicago Bears next season on that offensive line. But those are some of the biggest ones. Let me know some of the questions that you have for this team and what you want to see this team do that will make you feel more faithful and have more faith, I should say, in where this team can go next season and if they can get over that playoff hump. Let me know that down below. With that said, last topic of the day before we get out of here. Bears Wire has released their list of players that are on the roster bubble for the Chicago Bears. I'm not going to talk about all of them because the list is very long, right? But I'm talking about a few of these guys. First up, the running backs. Roshan Johnson, Britton Brown, and Coleman Bennett have all been listed as players that are on the roster bubble. Now, what I think it comes down to is that the Bears are going to look at any of those guys and they have the capability of being cut. And so I think that the competition for running back 3 is real this season. Now, how much they actually get on the football field behind Darnell Swift and Kyle Monanga is going to be another question there. But I do think that those guys are battling it out in a running back room, and they make sense there to be on that roster bubble. Then next up, the wide receivers. Scotty Miller, J.P. Richardson. J.P. Richardson, an undrafted free agent last year that was able to stick around on this team. Didn't get a lot of opportunity in the regular season, but his speed and his route running is really what stood out. But we haven't even talked about him in the wide receiver 3 battle or anything like that. Same thing for Scotty Miller, right? They're listed as a number of players. There's like 6 wide receivers that are listed here that could end up not making the roster, and that makes sense. For the tight end room, Steven Carlson, I think this just makes sense. When you drafted Sam Roush, you have still Cole Kmet here. Colston Loveland is making that leap this season, and I think people are going to realize he's one of the best tight ends, maybe the best tight end in the game of football. Steven Carlson being there makes sense. Next up on the offensive line, Kieran Amagaje, Caden Barnett were both listed as players that are on the roster bubble. Kieran, we talked about a couple of, I think maybe a week ago at this point. Kieran Amagaje just is a player that came in raw, and he hasn't developed anything. I don't mean to sound harsher than that, but he's still the same player he was when we drafted him. He's developed up until what we know now, right? Maybe that changes in training camp. Maybe that changes in the preseason. He has developed nothing. So, of course, he's going to be on the roster bubble because you got guys that have come in after him and have already passed him up and shown more development. So, Kieran Amagaje's there. The Vanilla Gorilla and Caden Barnett, I think he's listed as one of these players on the roster bubble just because, he is an undrafted free agent. You don't know exactly what he's going to be and what he's going to turn into, so you have to look at that part of it. But I think that he has a bit of an inside edge because, again, if you're talking about cutting one of those guys, Kieran Amagaje is showing you absolutely nothing. So Caden Barnett just got to come in and be a semblance of what he was in college, and I think he'll get there. On the defensive line, a number of names. So Jamari Chroma was listed. James Lynch, Jaden Loving, Kentavious Street were all listed as players, and James Lynch were all listed as players that are on the roster bubble. It seems like Neville Gallimore is the only one in that, only depth guy right now that is guaranteed to make the roster, whereas everybody else, it's a wait and see approach for the Chicago Bears coming into that. I think that's a little bit interesting. In the linebacker room, Bears Wire listed both Noah Sewell and Keyshawn Elliott, the rookie, as on the bubble. I don't believe, and maybe that's just my own ignorance, I don't believe that Keyshawn Elliott is not going to make it. What we've seen from Ryan Poles and what he does with players that he drafted, I refuse to believe that a player that he drafted is not going to make the roster in their first year. Now, Noah Sewell is a guy that hasn't really developed either very much. He's been often injured. He's shown some flashes, but I think with Jack Sanborn being back, Keyshawn Elliott being drafted, I could see a world in which Noah Sewell does not make this roster. And then lastly, in the cornerback room, Jalen Jones is probably the biggest name that was listed on this list as somebody that's on the roster bubble. I think when you look at some of the players, Terrell Smith coming back, Malik Muhammad being here, those guys kind of make some sense there. Outside of that, like I said, it was like 30, 40 names that were listed. So go and look at that list if you wanted, but those are the names that kind of stand out to me. Let me know what you guys think down below, though. Who are some players that you believe are on the roster bubble? Let me know that down below. But that's going to do it for today's episode, man. I want to appreciate y'all. Thank you guys for tuning in, man. We're heading into a new era of Chicago. Well, we started a new era last season. Now, this season, we get to take that, polish it off a little bit more, and see where we can go this upcoming season. Let me know down below, how excited are you for training camp opening wide tomorrow and NFL and preseason games being, 2 weeks away? We're going to talk about games real soon, and I can't wait for that. Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at Shy Bear Central on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearCentral@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bears related. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.